This video will break down what is GitHub, why the developers use GitHub, and most importantly, how you could benefit from using it. Let's jump right into it. GitHub is a web-based platform used for version control and collaboration. Web-based means that you can access GitHub via your web browser. Version control is a system that tracks and manages changes to files over time. To showcase how version control system works, I created an empty repository on GitHub, which is like a folder that contains all the files related to your project. Then I added a text file saying hello world. After that I changed the text inside the file to say goodbye world and saved the changes. As you can see, GitHub saved the previous version of the file and allowed me to go back to the previous version. The name of the version control system that GitHub uses is called a Git. I'll show you more examples of how it's used later in the video. The collaboration part means that you can invite other people to work on your project and other people can invite you to work on theirs. Many projects on GitHub are open source, meaning that anyone on the internet can access them. For instance, I could download this project as a zip file and use it for whatever is allowed by the creator. To summarize, GitHub consists of the version control system called Git and the hub, which is a central place for storing Git repositories in the cloud, and which provides a variety of tools that facilitate collaboration and sharing of repositories. In my mini demonstration, you saw how I've added a single text file to the repository. But what if I wanted to add lots of files from my computer? How would I go about storing a whole app or game project on GitHub? The simplest way to do that is to use Github Desktop. It simplifies the process of using Git and GitHub by providing a user-friendly interface instead of using a command line. Before installing Github Desktop, we first have to install Git on our computer. Go to gitscm.com/downloads and download the latest version for your operating system. Open the file and go through the installation process. Then head to desktop.github.com/download and download it for your operating system. While it's downloading, go to github.com and click Sign Up to create your account. Once you made your GitHub account, open the file you've just downloaded and install GitHub Desktop on your computer. Once you've installed it, open the app and sign in using your GitHub account credentials. Once you open GitHub Desktop and sign in through your account, this is the interface that you should see. I created a new project, specifically for this tutorial. It's called Tutorial Series. What we're going to do is we're going to save it to GitHub, which will allow us to store this project in the cloud. And if we ever want to access it from another computer, we'll be able to download it. Or if we want to share this project with a friend, we can add him to our repository and he'll be able to download it as well. So in order to get started with that, we need to first find the folder where our tutorial series project is saved. And in my case, if we just right click here and then do show in Explorer, we can see the main tutorial series folder and it's in Documents and Unity Projects. So what we have to do now is we have to go to GitHub Desktop. Once you click here, there's an Add button and we want to create a new repository. So the name of the repository should match the name of the project that we have saved, because otherwise it will create a new folder in the Unity Projects folder instead of using this folder as the root folder that we want to use. It's just going to be a bit annoying if we name it something else. And you should watch out for spaces inside the name of your folder, because GitHub by default doesn't support it. So if we type tutorial space series, you see it will add a hyphen here. So, and we don't want that. And we have to choose a local path. Local path should be the folder where your project is saved. So in this case, Unity Projects, and then we access tutorial series. So select the Unity Projects. Next setting is gitignore. Gitignore is what GitHub will use to ignore the files in our project. I'll show you how the gitignore file looks like later, but just know that there are a lot of presets for it. And if you're using Unreal Engine, then obviously use that. If you use Unity, use that. Or if you use anything else from the list, then obviously use the template that it suggests. And what it will do, it will basically ignore the files that we don't need to get over to the cloud. So in my case, we don't need this whole folder called library. And this library gets generated automatically on your computer and there's no need to save it on the cloud. So we don't need to get over 1.57 gigabytes of files for no reason. Once we've done that, we will go to GitHub Desktop and click Create Repository. After a while, you should see that now we have a current repository called Tutorial Series, 0 changed files, and if we go to history, we can see that it saved over all of those files to a commit. And a commit is basically like a collection of files that we are adding or changing or removing to or from the cloud. In our case, we added 48, well, more than 48 files. So you can see 6,178 files, but it only shows this many in here. Now we have to publish this repository, and what publishing does is it basically gets it over to the cloud. So once we do that, we can name it Tutorial Series, and there's a tick box called Keep this code private. If you want your code to be accessed by everyone in the world, then untick this box. But if you want it to be just for you or just for your team, tick it, because it will make it private, obviously. And let's publish our repository. And there we go. Now it's in the cloud. Now let's check it out. Let's see, if we go to repositories, now we can see Tutorial Series over here. How great. And we can see all the same, folders, but because of our gitignore file, for example, library or logs, they were not brought over to the cloud. And so GitHub saves some space for itself this way. And we save some space for GitHub, so that's great. And this is what the gitignore file looks like. Everything that gets placed in the gitignore file is ignored, and some of these things are, you see, the library folder, the temp folder, the builds folder, etc. And it also ignores certain file types such as csproj or unityproj, because those files are auto-generated. So there is no need to sync them over to the cloud. We can save some space and declutter our project. It's a great system. And now that we've done it, we added our project to GitHub and it's saved on the cloud and it's safe. Now what do? Now let's say we want to make a change to our project. Let's add a cube to our scene, and once we add this cube, let's see what happened. So we go to GitHub, because we haven't saved the scene, so we do Control S, it saved the sample scene, and now we can see the change. We can see that it shows this yellow square with a dot inside it, and that means that a file has been modified. And if it shows a green square with a plus, obviously it means that the file was added. Here we can see exactly what changes were made. In Unity scene files, it's pretty difficult to understand what's going on, so let's add something else. Let's create a prefab. So we'll just drag this cube over to a folder called prefabs. So let's create this folder. Right, we go over to GitHub, it automatically understood, okay, there's a new folder, and if we move the cube to the prefabs folder, it will recognize, aha, there's a new prefab called cube, and this is the information that's inside it. Great. So let's now commit this change to our cloud. Let's name it added cube to the scene. So here you have to name it something that you will be able to understand and your team will understand. There's some conventions to how every team does it, but if you're working on a project by yourself or just with a friend, this will be more than enough. And here you can write a description if you made a lot of changes to the files. And then all you have to do is press commit to main, and it will locally commit the files. But now if you want to push them to the cloud, to your friend or to yourself, you have to actually press push origin. And that's what will put it in the cloud. Now if we go to our repository and we refresh, instead of saying initial commit, it will say added cube to the scene. and we will be able to see the changes that we made because now we have a prefabs folder and we see cube.prefab is right there. Beautiful. The next step is, let's say we want to modify this. I don't know, make it a trigger, right? We save, and then we go to GitHub Desktop, and now instead of saying that we added the cube, it says that, okay, we modified it. And you can see exactly how it modified it. We see that this red line is what was removed from this file, and the green line is what was added to it. So if you write a script, you will be able to see that, okay, all the red things is what I removed and the green things are what I added. And let's say, okay, we don't need this cube prefab anymore. We want something else. We'll have a new cube that we just, made a duplicate of this cube, and we delete this cube. Delete. And as we can see now, instead of that cube being modified, it's deleted. So we completely deleted this cube. Yeah, now we have a new cube that was added, and the sample scene was changed because, as you can see, this cube is now missing, the prefab of it. So yeah, I mean, now you know what the version control system looks like. This is basically version control. We can see the changes that we made. We have a history of files that we changed and the history of commits. Now let's try to bring our cube back. Let's say we didn't really want to delete this cube. We like this cube and we actually wanted to use it in another project or like another scene, but we want to recover it. So to do that, we can right click on this change, right, along with the meta file if we want, and we can discard two selected changes. And now what you'll see will happen is it will discard what happened, essentially. So if we go to Unity, the cube was added back because we basically recovered what we lost this way. And it's a very useful feature, obviously. If you made a change that you don't want anymore, you can just easily discard it. Okay, and also I realized I don't want this cube anymore, so I'll discard these two changes, and voila, the cube is not here anymore. Now that you understand how to work with GitHub by yourself, how to back up your project and how to make changes and to see the modifications and what files were added and deleted, now let's talk about working on your project in a team. So in order to do that, it's very important to know about branches. And right now we're on the main branch. I already added a second branch. If you want to create a new one, you can just press new branch and name it whatever you want. After that, it will just duplicate the main branch and add it down here. So let me show you what the main branch looks like in my project. Right now it's just a sphere, a cube. Also, I added a scripts folder with an empty script that just says this is the empty script on the main branch. Okay? And now let's talk about the second branch that I called Tom. Tom is pretty similar to the first branch, to the main branch, but it has a few differences. Firstly, it has a tower of cubes in the main scene. Secondly, there is an empty script, but instead of saying this is the main branch, it says this is an empty script on the Tom branch. Okay, it has the same name, it's in the same folder scripts. So let's imagine that we want to merge these two branches together. Maybe you worked on the inventory system and your friend worked on the movement system. So to merge it together, you would go to the current branch and you would press choose a branch to merge into main. And then you would select your friend's branch, and as you can see, if you made changes like I did to the same objects, then it will write something like this: two conflicted files when merging Tom into main. And obviously you have to resolve this conflict. And the way to resolve it is to create a merge commit, and here you can see various conflicts that appear. And you have a few options. So when it comes to conflicts with the scene, you can choose to either keep the scene that's on the main branch or the one that's on your friend's branch. So here you have to decide. I imagine if you worked on the same scene, you have to think who made the most changes to it. So if you were working on the movement, right, and it's more difficult to set up than the inventory system, then you should keep the movement system. Otherwise, do the opposite. So on the main branch, if you remember, we had a cube and a sphere, so let's keep that. And you see we resolved the first conflict, and then we have an empty script. And here, yes, we can either use the modification from the main branch or the Tom branch, or we can open this in our code editor, and here we can select what we want to do with it. Head is the main branch, and then this is the Tom branch. And what we can do is we can either, well, from here we can select whether we want to keep the main or Tom, or we want something else. We can delete all of it, or we can just delete these arrows, and then we can keep just the 2 comments here. So let's do that. So I'll save this. And when we come back, it says no conflicts remaining, and we just continue merge. All we have to do then is to push origin to, put it in the cloud. But let's see what our scene looks like now. Our sample scene has the cube and the sphere, which is exactly what we had in the main scene. That's great. And then our script, empty script, it now looks like this. And that's exactly what we changed in there. So everything worked correctly. And now you know how to resolve conflicts if they appear in your branches. So how you would add another person to your repository, it's pretty simple. All you have to do is go to settings, go to collaborators, and add people. And all you have to do is just type in their GitHub username. They should receive an email, and then they can be added to the project. All you have to do is do the same things as you did: download GitHub Desktop, download Git, simply press open with GitHub Desktop. That's it, guys. I hope that now you understand what is GitHub and how you can use it to back up your projects and collaborate with other people. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.